The sunken precursor of Antarctica. The very notion of a civilization predating all known history, submerged beneath the miles-thick ice of Antarctica, is a concept that orthodox geology and archaeology have long dismissed as impossible. Yet, a confluence of anomalous data, declassified military reconnaissance, and stubbornly persistent legends from ancient cultures worldwide points to a cataclysmic truth frozen in time. The theory does not propose a recent civilization, but a pre-glacial epoch society, perhaps thriving in a temperate Antarctic realm over 100,000 years ago, before a catastrophic crustal displacement or pole shift sealed its fate under an eternal winter. The first tantalizing clues emerged not from explorers, but from satellite data. In 2001, the joint U.S.-European RADARSAT mission, designed to map the continent's bedrock through ice, revealed startling large-scale geometric formations beneath the Wilkes Land region. These weren't natural glacial moraines. They presented as a series of right angles and concentric circles spanning nearly 200 miles, a scale defying natural explanation. This anomaly, known as the Wilkes Land gravity anomaly, is compounded by a massive, dense metallic object detected beneath it, suggesting an impact event of unimaginable force, or, as researchers like Dr. John Wyhopt initially posited, a possible, quote, remnant tectonic feature that suspiciously mirrors descriptions of a civilization-ending cataclysm. Ancient maps further fuel the mystery. The Piri-Reis map of 1513, compiled from earlier source charts reportedly dating to the Library of Alexandria, depicts the coastline of Antarctica, Queen Maud Land, with shocking accuracy, free of its ice cap. Modern seismic surveys confirm the topography hidden beneath millennia of ice matches this ancient cartography. The map's Ottoman admiral noted his sources were from the time of Alexander, hinting at knowledge passed down from a far more ancient seafaring culture that knew the continent in a green state. Similarly, the Orontius Venus map of 1531 shows interior rivers and mountain ranges now confirmed by subglacial scans. How could 16th century cartographers depict a continent that wouldn't be officially discovered until 1820 and map terrain invisible since the last ice age? The implication is a source civilization with advanced geographical knowledge, a knowledge that was preserved in fragments after their demise. Whispers of this lost world permeate mythologies. The Maori speak of Uru, a primordial homeland far to the south, swallowed by ice. Certain obscure Sumerian and Babylonian texts reference the kingdom of the gods located in the underworld of the south wind, a place of eternal darkness and ancient guarded secrets. These are not mere coincidences of folklore, but potential cultural memories of a catastrophic event that reshaped the world and erased the first chapter of human, or perhaps pre-human history. The most compelling modern evidence comes from air sampling over the continent, which has detected trace levels of industrial byproducts like tetraethyl lead and chlorofluorocarbons at depths in ice cores corresponding to timelines that challenge our entire understanding of technological development. While mainstream science attributes these to volcanic or other natural processes, the patterns are aberrant. Could they be atmospheric fossils, the last chemical ghosts of a sophisticated culture that knew too much about the planet's geophysical cycles and in wielding that knowledge triggered their own glacial entombment? The ice, slowly yielding its secrets, may hold the ultimate suppressed history, that we are not the first to rise, and that the silent white expanse at the bottom of our world is the graveyard of the first civilization to fall. The vanished architects of the Gobi megaliths. Deep within the inhospitable heart of the Gobi Desert, far from the fertile river valleys believed to be the cradles of civilization, lie the ruins that challenge this very paradigm. Scattered across the Altai Mountains and the plains of Inner Mongolia are colossal, precisely worked megalithic blocks arranged in formations that defy both the nomadic history of the region and known construction capabilities of any recorded culture. These are not the simple stone circles of pastoral societies. They are the crumbling foundations of vast geometric complexes, walls of interlocking polygonal masonry rivaling that of Sacsayhuaman in Peru, and solitary multi-ton standing stones positioned with clear astronomical alignments. Local Mongol and Turkic peoples refer to these sites as the stone books of the Shani, or the foundations of the giants, asserting they were built by a race of master builders who inhabited the region when the Gobi was a temperate forested grassland. This aligns with geological data indicating the Gobi was a savanna-like ecosystem as recently as 8,000 to 10,000 years ago, before a rapid desertification event. The civilization that left these markers, therefore, did not thrive in a desert, but in a paradise that later turned to dust, erasing not only their habitat, but the very memory of their existence from the historical record. The most enigmatic of these sites is a complex known to a handful of explorers and suppressed by regional authorities as the Grid. Aerial surveys, rarely permitted, reveal a sprawling network of low, linear stone walls forming perfect rectangles, squares, and concentric circles over an area of nearly 20 miles. The scale is administrative or agricultural, but the precision is ceremonial. At its center lies a raised platform of fitted basalt blocks featuring drilled holes and channels that suggest a sophisticated understanding of hydraulics or possibly even energy conduction. Russian geologist Vyacheslav Zaitsev, who risked his career publishing initial findings in the 1960s, noted anomalous magnetic readings at specific points within the grid, with compass needles deviating consistently toward certain megalithic nodes. Furthermore, rare earth element analysis of the stone shows unusual concentrations of neodymium and praseodymium, metals critical in modern permanent magnet and laser technology, whose natural occurrence in such a localized, refined state is geologically improbable. Were these stones artificially enhanced or refined? The indigenous Tuvan peoples have an oral tradition speaking of the singing stones of the Old World, blocks that would hum with a low frequency at dawn, used by the ancient ones to communicate with the sky road. This echoes modern observations of piezoelectricity in certain quartz-rich rocks, which can generate electrical charges under mechanical stress, such as from seismic waves or even sound vibrations. Did this lost civilization of the Gobi possess a form of geophysical technology, a means of harnessing the Earth's own energy for purposes we can scarcely comprehend? The silence surrounding these sites is as telling as the stones themselves. Attempts by independent archaeologists to carbon date organic material from mortar seams, where mortar is present, have been systematically blocked. Satellite imagery on public platforms like Google Earth is conspicuously blurred or distorted over the key coordinates. The official Chinese archaeological stance is that the structures are fortifications of the Xiongnu period, c. 3rd century BC, an explanation grossly inadequate for the megalithic scale and weathering patterns indicating far greater antiquity. The rapid desertification of the Gobi around 2000 BC, possibly linked to a cometary impact event evidenced by tektite fields across Southeast Asia, provides a potential cataclysm. This civilization, with its advanced stoneworking and apparent geoengineering knowledge, may have foreseen or even attempted to mitigate this disaster. Their fate was to be doubly erased, first by the sandstorms that buried their cities, and then by the institutions that cannot allow a narrative of a technologically adept pre-Chinese civilization in the region. They knew how to manipulate stone and perhaps earth energies, but that knowledge died with them, buried under the dunes, leaving only silent, magnetically anomalous sentinels as a warning that empires can turn to dust in the blink of a geological eye. 3. The chrononauts of the Saraswati River Valley. Conventional history teaches that the Indus Valley Civilization, or Harappan culture, was a Bronze Age society remarkable for its urban planning, but lacking the grand monuments, obvious temples, or evidence of centralized warfare of its contemporaries. This sanitized view, however, deliberately sidesteps the profound and unsettling mysteries of its predecessor, the culture of the legendary Saraswati River Valley. Described in the ancient Rig Veda as a mighty, pure, and swift-flowing river, the Saraswati was the lifeblood of a civilization said to be far older and more advanced than the Harappans that succeeded it. Satellite imagery and geological surveys have confirmed the paleo channel of a massive river system, matching the Vedic descriptions that dried up around 1900 BCE due to tectonic shifts. Along its banks, however, are ruins that do not fit the Harappan model. Sites like Barana and Rocky Garhi show evidence of continuous habitation dating back to 7500 BCE, pushing the dawn of subcontinental urbanism into the Neolithic. But it is the anomalous artifacts and architectural oddities that suggest this society knew too much about concepts they should not have possessed. Excavations at the site of Dolavira, while classified as Harappan, reveal a staggering preoccupation with time and celestial mechanics. The city is laid out as a gigantic rectilinear instrument, with gates and walls aligned to solstices and equinoxes with a precision requiring millennia of astronomical observation. At its heart is a complex water management system comprised of a series of reservoirs, but their configuration creates a perfect large-scale chronometer. During the summer solstice, sunlight passes through a specific slit in the northern bastion to illuminate a single carved stone in the central citadel. This is not merely a calendar, it is a solar computer of sorts. Even more perplexing are the non-utilitarian objects found in deeper pre-Harappan strata, finely machined stone spheres of perfect concentricity, rods of an unknown copper-nickel-silver alloy that show no corrosion, and tablets depicting humanoid figures alongside complex spiraling symbols that bear a disturbing resemblance to double-helix DNA or schematic representations of magnetic fields. The most guarded secret is a subterranean chamber discovered at Rocky Garhi in 2016, promptly sealed by authorities, which early reports from junior archaeologists described as containing a circular platform of fused black material surrounded by skeletal remains seated in a circle, none showing signs of trauma. The walls were said to be inscribed with a star map depicting constellations not in their current positions, but as they would have appeared over 12,000 years ago. The suppression of the Saraswati civilization's legacy is intrinsically linked to modern political and religious narratives. Acknowledging the depth of its antiquity and sophistication dismantles simplistic theories of Aryan migration and the origins of Vedic culture. It suggests a continuity of knowledge so advanced that its core, perhaps a science of psychoacoustics, evidenced by the perfect acoustic properties of certain fire altars, geomancy, and astrobiology, was considered dangerous. The Vedas themselves, products of this culture's descendants, are filled with technological-sounding descriptions: the Vimana, flying chariots, the Astra, directed energy weapons, and the concept of yuga cycles, vast epochs of time ending in destruction. These are often dismissed as myth or allegory. But what if they are the fragmented, poetic memories of applied science from the Saraswati era? The civilization's end coincided with the desiccation of its river, but their meticulously engineered cities show evidence of planned, orderly abandonment, not invasion or collapse. It is as if they saw the end coming and departed, taking their core knowledge with them. Their legacy was not in monuments, but in a conceptual understanding of time and cosmic order so potent that it had to be encoded in myth and ritual, its true meaning suppressed for millennia lest it fall into the wrong hands. They knew the cycles of catastrophe, mastered the flow of time and water, and then vanished from the historical record, leaving behind only cryptic ruins and a body of literature that modern science is only beginning to decipher as something other than fantasy.
4. The silent citadel of the Grand Chaco. Stretching across the borders of Paraguay, Bolivia, and Argentina, the Grand Chaco is one of South America's most formidable and least explored wildernesses, a vast arid plain of thorn scrub and quebracho forests. It is here, hidden from aerial view by dense canopy and deliberately obscured on modern maps, that the ruins of a sprawling, anomalous complex known to a handful of indigenous guides and clandestine surveyors as Teikana lie silently crumbling. Unlike the well-documented Mesoamerican or Andean civilizations, the builders of Teikana left no pottery shards, no burial goods, and no decipherable glyphs. What they left are structures of such perplexing design and scale that they defy categorization, suggesting a technological paradigm alien to the pre-Columbian world. The site consists of multiple raised platforms constructed not from fitted stone, but from a single monolithic concrete-like substance, a geopolymer of fused local silica and calcium carbonate, forming seamless curved walls and parabolic arches. The composition of this material, analyzed in secret by a French materials engineer in the 1990s, shows a molecular uniformity and compressive strength exceeding modern Portland cement, yet it is radiocarbon dated from organic inclusions to be approximately 4,000 years old. The architecture shows no doors or windows in the conventional sense, only a series of narrow vertical slits and descending spiraling ramps that lead to subterranean chambers flooded with perpetually still, potable water. The most confounding feature of Teikana is its complete acoustic and electromagnetic silence. Within a 500-meter radius of the central citadel, all electronic devices fail. Compasses spin erratically, and even sound is dampened to an eerie whisper. Expeditions report a profound psychological effect, a feeling of temporal dislocation and the suppression of short-term memory. The local Ayoreo and Guarani peoples have strict taboos against entering the zone, referring to it as the place where time sleeps, and speaking of the Mborevi, the Shapers, who built it as a trap for bad spirits or a machine to quiet the world. This is not mere superstition. In 2008, a joint Brazilian-Argentinian geological survey, ostensibly studying groundwater, deployed magnetometers and gravimeters in the region. Their unpublished report, later leaked, noted a massive subsurface obelisk of an unknown, highly dense metallic element at the site's epicenter, generating a localized distortion in the Earth's magnetic field. More startling were passive seismic readings that indicate the entire structure acts as a giant damping resonator, absorbing and neutralizing ambient seismic waves from the nearby Andean subduction zone. It is, effectively, an ancient anti-earthquake device of continental scale. Why has this civilization been erased? Firstly, its existence challenges the narrative of cultural diffusion across the Americas, positing an isolated, hyper-specialized technological culture with knowledge of advanced material science and geophysics. Secondly, the implications of its purpose are deeply unsettling. If Teikana was indeed a geophysical stabilization mechanism, it suggests its builders possessed a predictive understanding of tectonic stress and seismic events far beyond our own. Did they seek to control the very geology of the continent? Their end is a mystery. The site shows no signs of conflict, disease, or abandonment due to resource depletion. It appears simply to have been switched off and left intact, as if awaiting a future activation. The modern suppression is twofold. South American governments, wary of attracting treasure hunters or sparking indigenous land claims, have classified all data. Meanwhile, international archaeological bodies, unable to fit Teikana into established paradigms, dismiss it as a natural geological formation, despite the manifestly artificial evidence. This silent citadel stands as a monument not to kings or gods, but to a civilization that sought to tame planetary forces, and in doing so, perhaps became a threat to the natural order, or to those who would rather such knowledge remain lost. Their ultimate knowing, the secret of quieting the earth itself, was their legacy, and the reason they were written out of history.
5. The phosphorescent culture of the Yonaguni monument. Off the southernmost tip of Japan's Ryukyu archipelago, beneath the swift, dark currents of the East China Sea, lies a geological formation that has ignited fierce controversy since its discovery in 1987. The Yonaguni Monument, a vast, stepped sandstone complex resting at depths of up to 30 meters, is officially categorized as a fascinating natural formation, a product of tectonic activity and marine erosion. This orthodox explanation, however, willfully ignores a cascade of anomalous details that point to the hand of a sophisticated prehistoric culture, a culture that may have thrived on a now submerged continental shelf and possessed a relationship with bioluminescence and deep-sea environments that seems almost otherworldly. The monument's features are geometrically precise: two colossal parallel monoliths resembling megalithic gates, sharp-angled terraces with 90-degree corners, a spiraling staircase, and what appears to be a carved relief of a humanoid face alongside a creature resembling a turtle. Geologist Robert Schoch, while initially skeptical, conceded that the persistent regularity and repetitive right angles are unlike any natural underwater sandstone formation he had studied globally. The clincher comes from core samples drilled from the stage area, which show tool marks at a microscopic level inconsistent with tidal or geological abrasion, suggesting the application of a hard, possibly metallic implement. But the structure itself is only the beginning of the mystery. Surrounding the main monument are a series of lesser-known, deeper formations that exhibit a bizarre phenomenon. Certain carved channels and basins are lined with a species of deep-sea coral that does not grow elsewhere in the region. This coral, when subjected to sonar pulses or specific low-frequency sounds, emits a sustained, faint phosphorescent glow. Japanese marine biologist Dr. Masaiki Kimura, who has risked professional censure to study the site for decades, hypothesizes that the entire complex was designed as a giant resonance chamber and bioluminescent display. He points to the strategic placement of the monument atop a massive active methane hydrate deposit. Seismic activity, he proposes, could cause the release of gas bubbles that, rising through the precisely cut channels, would create harmonic frequencies. These frequencies would, in turn, stimulate the photoproteins in the specialized coral, turning the submerged pyramid into a pulsating beacon of light visible from the surface on certain nights. This is not mere speculation. Night dives during minor seismic events have recorded anomalous, localized glows in the water column above the site. Ancient Jomon pottery from the nearby islands, dating to over 10,000 years old, depict zigzag patterns and spiral forms that uncannily resemble the layout of Yonaguni's terraces, alongside symbols interpreted as fire under the sea. The civilization that engineered this marvel was likely coastal, thriving on the vast, fertile plains of the now drowned landmass geologists call the Ryukyu Shelf. Their erasure was a product of the catastrophic sea level rise at the end of the last ice age, around 10,000 BCE. Yet the suppression of their history is modern and deliberate. The Japanese government's Agency for Cultural Affairs has repeatedly blocked extensive archaeological mapping, citing the site's natural status and its location in sensitive maritime territory near Taiwan. The implication of a sophisticated pre-Japanese culture that mastered a form of bioarchitectural technology poses a direct challenge to the established narratives of Japanese cultural origins. Furthermore, the site's potential as a geophysical trigger mechanism, a structure built atop a volatile gas deposit, hints at a knowledge that was perilous. Did this culture learn to harness seismic and bioluminescent energy for communication, worship, or perhaps as a warning system for tectonic upheaval? Their understanding of the intersection between geology, biology, and acoustics represents a lost science.
The Yonaguni monument is not a random act of nature. It is the eroded, silent testament of a people who spoke with the light of the deep ocean, a civilization that knew how to make the earth itself shine in the darkness. Their disappearance beneath the waves was a physical end, but their memory has been subjected to a second drowning, a deliberate effort to keep their luminous knowledge buried under layers of academic skepticism and bureaucratic denial.
6. The aerial surveyors of the Nazca Pampa. The Nazca lines of Peru are world-famous, vast geoglyphs etched into the desert pavement, depicting spiders, monkeys, and hummingbirds best viewed from the air. Mainstream archaeology attributes them to the Nazca culture, 200 BCE to 600 CE, created for ritualistic walking or as offerings to deities in the sky. This interpretation, however, becomes untenable when one moves beyond the popular zoomorphic figures to examine the lesser-known, vastly more complex geometric and linear systems that cover hundreds of square miles. These are not simple walking paths. They are precise azimuths, running dead straight for over 20 miles across mountainous terrain without deviating more than a few feet, demonstrating a mastery of geodesy, the science of measuring the earth, that the Nazca, without the wheel or written language, should not have possessed. Furthermore, the lines are not merely scraped clean of surface rock. The subsoil beneath them has been chemically and physically altered. Analysis of soil samples from the Pampa region, conducted by researchers from the University of Dresden, revealed that the ground beneath the lines was fused at a microscopic level by exposure to intense, focused heat, creating a permanent, waterproof crust. This is not the work of people moving stones by hand. It is the signature of a directed energy process. The true architects of this landscape-scale project may not have been the Nazca at all, but a far older, technologically adept precursor civilization that used the Pampa as a calibrated survey grid for a global purpose. Satellite imaging reveals that the major Nazca lines align not with celestial bodies in a simple seasonal sense, but with specific geological hotspots and other ancient megasites across the planet. The longest straight line, for instance, points unerringly to the axis of the Great Pyramid of Giza, accounting for continental drift when projected along a Great Circle route. Another major alignment targets the ancient city of Mohenjo-Daro in the Indus Valley. The grid itself, when mapped in 3 dimensions accounting for Earth's curvature, forms a harmonic pattern matching standing wave nodes in the planet's own magnetic field, a concept only articulated in modern geophysics. This suggests the Nazca Pampa is not an art gallery, but the surviving surface component of a planetary positioning system of staggering antiquity. The animal figures, then, could be later additions or symbolic markers placed by successor cultures who dimly remembered the site's sacred purpose but had lost the knowledge of its original function. This precursor civilization, which we might call the Pampa surveyors, possessed the ability to modify soil chemistry and project alignments across thousands of miles. Their knowledge was one of global cartography and perhaps even atmospheric or tectonic manipulation. Why was this civilization erased? The evidence points to a cataclysmic intervention. The entire Nazca region is littered with layers of vitrified rock and mineral melt, often dismissed as volcanic glass or fulgurite from lightning strikes. However, the distribution is inconsistent with known volcanic activity and too widespread for lightning. It matches the effects of an intense, widespread thermal pulse from above, a signature some researchers have controversially linked to a plasma-based atmospheric event or even an orbital energy weapon of imaginable antiquity. The local legends, preserved in fragmented form by the Moche and later Inca, speak of a time when the gods painted the desert with fire from their spears to silence the earth measurers who had grown arrogant and were stealing the soul of the world. This civilization knew too much about the planet's ley lines, its resonant frequencies, and its energy grid. In possessing that knowledge, they may have attracted the attention of or threatened another power. Their erasure was near total, leaving only their indelible markings on the desert floor as a testament to their skill and a warning of their fate. Modern suppression continues through the tourist-friendly, simplistic narrative that reduces one of Earth's most profound and mysterious engineered landscapes to ritualistic doodles.
To acknowledge the pompous surveyors is to admit that a lost science of planetary engineering once existed, and that the blank slate of the Peruvian desert is in fact a sophisticated blueprint we have only just begun to decode, a blueprint for a technology that could remap the world and whose possessors were removed from history for daring to use it.
7. The subterranean network of the Derinkuyu anomaly. In the Cappadocia region of Turkey, the ancient underground city of Derinkuyu is a celebrated historical site, an 8-level marvel carved from soft volcanic tuff, capable of housing 20,000 people. It is attributed to the Phrygians or early Christians as a refuge. However, geological surveys and restricted archaeological digs have revealed that the known city is merely the uppermost level of a far more vast and ancient complex, a multi-layered, labyrinthine network that descends over a mile into the Earth's crust, featuring engineering far beyond mere survival architecture. Using ground-penetrating radar and seismic tomography, researchers from Ankara University in a classified 2012 study mapped a continuation of shafts, chambers, and perfectly circular tunnels extending to depths where the surrounding rock transitions from tough to hard basalt, a material that would have been impossible to work with the primitive iron tools of the attributed eras. These lower levels exhibit features with no logical purpose for a refuge: massive disc-shaped chambers with smooth, vitrified walls, vertical shafts that are acoustically tuned to specific frequencies, and ventilation ducts that follow a precise helical pattern, inducing a constant, mild airflow driven by geothermal temperature differentials alone. This is not a city built to hide. It is a subsurface installation built for a long-term, technologically sustained existence. The true builders, whom we might term the subterranean engineers, appear to have been a culture that retreated from the surface millennia before the Phrygians arrived. Carbon dating of soot deposits from deep-level ventilation ducts yield dates clustering around 9,500 BCE, coinciding with the Younger Dryas cataclysm, a period of abrupt global cooling and catastrophic flooding. This suggests Derinkuyu's original purpose was planetary sanctuary, a sealed ark designed to preserve knowledge and life through a surface-level extinction event. The most disturbing evidence lies in the deepest accessible chamber, discovered by a Turkish military engineering team in 1985 and immediately sealed. Leaked diagrams from that expedition show a room dominated by a central plinth of an unknown black, non-crystalline material, upon which rested large crystalline discs described as information storage devices by the sole surviving civilian consultant, a physicist who later retracted his statement. Furthermore, the walls of this chamber were inscribed not with pictographs, but with a mathematical language based on prime numbers and geometric constants, including a precise early representation of the fine structure constant, a fundamental physical quantity that governs electromagnetism, only formally discovered in the 20th century. The erasure of this civilization is twofold. First, their choice was self-erasure, a deliberate retreat from a lethally unstable surface world into the planetary womb. They traded sunlight for geothermal energy and bioluminescent fungi, samples of which, showing genetic modification for enhanced light output, have been found in closed-off sections. They knew how to live within the Earth, tapping into its heat and magnetic fields for power, and possibly using acoustic resonance for communication and matter manipulation. Second, their legacy has been actively suppressed by modern authorities. The Turkish government maintains absolute control over the site, permitting only curated tours of the upper levels. Any research proposing a pre-Phrygian origin is denied funding or access. The implications are too profound: an advanced, scientifically literate culture existing at the end of the last ice age, possessing a deep understanding of fundamental physics and geoengineering. Their survival strategy represented the ultimate rejection of surface civilization's cyclical rise and fall.
By going underground, they removed themselves from the historical timeline entirely, becoming a myth. Their knowledge of planetary safety, of sustainable subsurface living, and data storage in crystalline matrices is the ultimate suppressed history. It suggests that the only way to preserve a civilization through a global cataclysm is to abandon the surface world altogether, a lesson that modern humanity, facing its own existential threats, is perhaps not yet ready to learn, and which certain powers may wish to keep buried, quite literally, under miles of stone.
8. The transoceanic cartographers of Doggerland. Beneath the cold, turbulent waves of the North Sea, between the UK and Denmark, lies Doggerland, a vast submerged landscape that was, until around 6,500 BCE, a fertile, low-lying plain and a heartland of human settlement in Mesolithic Europe. Conventional archaeology views its inhabitants as hunter-gatherers. However, the systematic dredging up of anomalous artifacts by North Sea trawlers over decades paints a radically different picture, one of a sophisticated maritime culture with transoceanic reach and a precise understanding of global geography that shatters the timeline of human exploration. These are not mere flint tools or bone harpoons. They include finely crafted bronze and copper artifacts with unusual alloys, stone anchors of a design used in the ancient Mediterranean, and, most provocatively, portions of waterlogged wooden tablets bearing incised maps that depict coastlines of the Americas and the Arctic Circle with accurate longitudinal proportions, a feat supposedly impossible before the 18th century. The so-called Doggerland maps, held in private collections and authenticated by reluctant experts, suggest this culture did not just live in Doggerland, they sailed from it, charting the world during the last Ice Age's thaw. The evidence points to a society that thrived on the rich resources of the now drowned landmass, developing advanced maritime technology to navigate the post-glacial world. Sonar mapping of the southern North Sea floor has revealed not just submerged river valleys, but geometric formations, the outlines of large circular long barrows, aligned stone avenues, and what appears to be a gargantuan circular henge structure with a diameter exceeding that of Stonehenge by a factor of 3. This was a landscape engineered for both ceremony and utility. Furthermore, core samples from the seabed, taken by oil companies and later analyzed by independent researchers, contain layered deposits of plant matter and pollen, indicating organized, large-scale agriculture and silviculture, the management of forests for sustainable wood production, crucial for shipbuilding. This was not a nomadic culture, it was a settled, agricultural, and nautical civilization. Their knowledge was one of currents, stars, and land masses. They likely established outposts and trade routes that connected prehistoric Europe to North America via the ice-free corridors of the North Atlantic, explaining the controversial pre-Clovis archaeological sites in the eastern United States and the shared megalithic architectural styles between Europe and parts of New England. The cataclysm that erased Doggerland was the Storegga Slide, a colossal submarine landslide off Norway around 6,200 BCE that triggered a devastating tsunami, inundating the low-lying plains within hours. This civilization was physically washed away, its libraries of wooden maps and its great wooden ships pulverized. But the suppression of their history is an academic and institutional endeavor. Acknowledging Doggerland as a cradle of a sophisticated, map-making transoceanic culture upends the foundational narrative of civilization progressing from the Middle East to the Mediterranean and then northwards. It places a highly advanced society in prehistoric Northern Europe, a concept that has uncomfortable parallels with distorted nationalist ideologies of the past. Consequently, mainstream scholarship dismisses the anomalous artifacts as modern contamination or misdated, and the seabed structures as glacial moraines. The Doggerland cartographers knew the shape of the world, in an age believed to be one of isolated local tribes. Their erasure was a geological accident, but their memory has been subjected to a deliberate campaign of neglect.
They represent the ultimate lost lineage of exploration, a civilization that mapped the globe millennia before history says it could be done, and whose drowned homeland holds the proof, a proof that remains at the bottom of the sea, carefully ignored by those who write the textbooks.
9. The resonance engineers of the Mississippi Mounds. Across the eastern United States, from the Ohio River Valley to the Gulf Coast, lie the remnants of the mound-building cultures, the Adena, Hopewell, and most famously, the Mississippian peoples of Cahokia. The official narrative describes these as complex chieftains engaged in ritual, trade, and astronomical observation. However, a closer examination of the mound's placement, composition, and acoustic properties reveals a legacy of geoacoustic engineering so advanced that it implies a lost science of landscape resonance, inherited and perhaps only partially understood by the historical cultures we name. The great mounds are not randomly placed ceremonial centers. They are positioned at specific nodes of infrasound generation, locations where wind patterns against geographical features or underground water flows create constant, low-frequency vibrations inaudible to the human ear, but with profound effects on consciousness and biology. The builders, a precursor civilization we might call the mound engineers, did not merely build on the land, they built with it, using Earth itself as a component in a continent-scale harmonic instrument. Cahokia's Monk's Mound, the largest prehistoric earthen construction in the Americas, is the most potent example. Core samples show it is not simply a pile of dirt. Its internal structure is a meticulously layered cake of different soil types, clays, silts, sands, and ground limestone, arranged in a specific stratification pattern that acts as a giant acoustic lens. Studies by the University of Oklahoma's Geophysics Department, largely unpublished, demonstrated that during prevailing wind conditions, Monk's Mound emits a steady 19 Hz infrasonic tone, a frequency known to induce feelings of awe, transcendence, and even temporary visual disorientation. This is not an accident. The surrounding woodhenge posts and the precise angles of the mound's terraces act as a resonator and amplifier, focusing this energy toward the central plaza. Furthermore, many of the thousands of smaller mounds dotting the landscape are positioned along precise geometric and ley lines that connect to major geological faults. Seismic monitoring has shown that these mounds act as dampeners, absorbing and dissipating minor tectonic stress in a way that stabilizes the region. The mound engineers were masters of terraforming for psychoacoustic and geophysical stability. What did this civilization know that led to its erasure? Their knowledge was one of direct, somatic interaction with the Earth's energy grid. They understood how to shape landscapes to influence human neurology and to placate geological forces. This represents a form of applied geomancy so potent it borders on a technology of consciousness. The evidence of their sophistication is also the evidence of their end. At multiple major mound sites, including the Serpent Mound in Ohio and the Poverty Point Complex in Louisiana, archaeologists have discovered thin layers of vitrified soil and fused clay at the bases of the mounds, indicating exposure to extreme, focused heat. This is paired with layers of soot and debris that suggest not invasion, but a rapid, catastrophic thermal event that scorched the sites but left the mounds structurally intact. Local indigenous legends, from the Choctaw to the Cherokee, speak of a time when the mound keepers grew arrogant, singing the earth's song too loudly, and were silenced by a fire from the sky that did not consume. The mound engineers' knowledge, the ability to harness infrasound for societal cohesion or spiritual experience, and to potentially mitigate earthquakes, was a double-edged sword. In wielding it, they may have triggered a backlash from the very forces they sought to control, or attracted a rival power with orbital or atmospheric weaponry. Their civilization was scorched from the historical record, leaving only the great silent earthworks as their testament.
Modern archaeology, wary of entering into pseudo-scientific interpretations of sound and energy, reduces these sites to political and ritual centers, thus performing a second erasure. The truth is that the mounds are not just piles of dirt. They are the fossilized circuitry of a lost civilization that spoke to the planet in the language of vibration, and were silenced for knowing how to listen.
10. The celestial alchemists of the Taklamakan. In the hyper-arid heart of Central Asia, where the shifting sands of the Taklamakan Desert are said to swallow entire cities, lies the most chemically anomalous and deliberately obscured ruin of all, the necropolis of Shaohe, and its far older, deeper predecessor known only from classified Chinese mineral survey reports as Site X7. While the Shaohe tombs themselves, dating to 2000 BCE, are famous for their remarkably preserved mummies of Caucasian descent, the true mystery lies beneath them. Core drilling at Shaohe revealed a previously unknown stratum, a layer of fused green glass, a desert glass similar to Libyan desert glass but far more extensive, intermixed with structural debris of a metallic nature. Analysis of this debris, smuggled out in the 1990s, revealed alloys of titanium, aluminum, and vanadium in a state of isotopic purity impossible to achieve with ancient or even early modern metallurgical techniques. This is not the detritus of a burial ground, it is the slag of a high-temperature industrial process located in one of the most resource-poor environments on Earth. The implication is that the true civilization here, the celestial alchemists, were not defined by their tombs, but by their mastery over matter itself, pursued in this desolate basin for reasons that may have been extraterrestrial in nature. The Taklamakan sits beneath what modern aerospace engineers call a low magnetic variance window, a region where Earth's magnetic field is unusually weak and stable. This, coupled with the atmosphere's exceptional clarity and dryness, makes it an ideal location for astronomical observation and theoretically for certain forms of mass energy transduction. Ancient Tocharian texts, fragmentary and poorly understood, reference the fire of Vairocana, a process conducted in sand temples where sky iron was taught to flow like water and light was trapped in stone. This reads as allegory until one examines the physical evidence from Site X7. The fused glass sheets show flow patterns consistent with directional, explosive melting, not a meteorite impact. Embedded within the glass are microscopic, perfect spheres of iron-nickel alloy with crystalline structures that form only in zero gravity or under conditions of intense magnetic levitation. Furthermore, ground-penetrating radar indicates the presence of vast subsurface chambers arranged in a spiral pattern descending hundreds of feet, their walls lined with a thin layer of powdered quartz and cinnabar, a mixture that when subjected to electromagnetic induction can theoretically produce a plasma. This civilization appears to have been engaged in atomic-level manipulation of materials, possibly in an attempt to create synthetic elements or stable isotopes for purposes of energy storage or even propulsion. Their erasure is absolute and telling. The entire region shows a radiological signature that, while faint, is anomalous. Background gamma radiation levels are subtly elevated in a concentric pattern around Shaohe, and certain sand samples contain short-lived radioactive isotopes with half-lives that suggest they were created in situ, not deposited naturally. The most plausible scenario is that the alchemists' experiments culminated in a criticality event, a nuclear accident of sorts, perhaps a fission-fusion reaction gone wrong around 3000 BCE. This would have vitrified the desert floor, poisoned the immediate environment, and scattered their technological achievements to the winds. The few survivors, their knowledge fractured, may have become the Tocharian mummies found in later, cruder tombs above. Modern suppression is absolute. The Chinese government has cordoned off vast swaths of the Taklamakan under the guise of military testing grounds. Satellite imagery is perpetually obscured.
The official line is that the desert glass is a natural phenomenon and any anomalous metal is debris from modern rocket tests, but the dating contradicts. This civilization knew too much about the fabric of matter and the manipulation of atomic forces. In their remote desert laboratory, they skirted the boundaries of alchemy and nuclear physics, seeking perhaps to transmute elements or harness stellar energy. Their fate was self-immolation, a lesson written in glass and radioactive sand. Their legacy is the ultimate suppressed history, a warning that the pursuit of certain knowledge without the wisdom to control it leads not to transcendence, but to being utterly and completely erased from the world's memory, leaving only cryptic, irradiated ruins under a sea of sand as a monument to ambition's fatal price.